Now, the government is going to pay the rent for 16,000 homes for migrants, leaving thousands of local families facing years on housing waiting lists.
Nearly 60,000 asylum seekers will be housed in the properties as the government looks to cut its reliance on migrant hotels, which is costing the taxpayer £8 million a day. Well, joining us now is political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heale. I mean, it's hardly going to get the people, you know, rolling over laughing and saying they're now going to vote Conservative, is it? We weren't particularly impressed the amount of money being spent on migrant hotels. I don't think anyone's going to be particularly impressed saying, oh, great, they're going to pay people's rents instead in private accommodation in houses.
No, I mean, I think the issue of migrants who've arrived here in the UK is a bit like sort of whack-a-mole. You sort of knock it down, it pops up elsewhere. I think the key thing in government is choosing the least worst option. And essentially, this is going to cost per migrant about £30 per day to put them in these kind of places, dispersed accommodation versus a hotel bill of about £150 a head. So a fifth cheaper. And obviously that was to get the headline figure of the £8 million a day hotel bill down. And also, as much as we could talk about, you know, where these places are going to be in dispersed accommodation, you've also got to remember, for instance, where those hotels were. Some of those hotels are in seaside places where local MPs there are complaining, hang on a sec, we used to have lots of tourists there. If they're booked up by asylum seekers, it means that we can't get people in there to stimulate the economy, the local seaside economy. We need people to be there to spending money, etc. So it's basically the least worst option. And the difficulty is, of course, how do you get the bills down with putting them somewhere? But I suspect those who find asylum seekers in their area are not going to be too happy by all this.
Yeah, you're right about that, James. I remember interviewing a councillor in Skegness, the lovely seaside resort, where 6 of the seafront hotels are full of migrants, so they can't get tourists in. There goes the local economy. So that's one problem. So it's all very well to get rid of the migrants or to try to get rid of migrants from these hotels and put them into these houses. As you say, that reduces the average cost per migrant from £150 a night to £30 a night. That's great. The trouble is there are struggling, particularly young British families, young British people, and lots of struggling people trying to get accommodation, and they now won't be able to get it because asylum seekers will be taking up all the homes. That is going to cause real problems. And I've heard of one case, I can't reveal the details, where a lady who's, I would suggest, is probably in her 50s, is being kicked out of her home, which is rented, in order for asylum seekers to be put in because the owners of the home can get a better deal from the government to pay this. So the problem here is going to be people who are struggling to find accommodation, struggling to get rental accommodation, learning that all over their local area, asylum seekers are living in these places scot-free, and they can't find anywhere to live. That is a political headache, the political storm brewing, I would have thought.
Massively so. And of course, we just haven't built enough housing in this country of any kind for the past 50 years or so. And so it's a long-standing issue. And of course, you have more people coming into the country, you know, who basically aren't allowed to work under law. These illegal migrants who arrive here are not allowed to work. So they're not adding anything to the economy. You then have to put them up in places. And of course, if it's a zero-sum game where resources are already quite tight, you're going to put them in places. And a lot of landlords, frankly, as you say, Kevin, there, would rather take the government money and know that you're going to get the steady paycheck rather than have someone else who might have to be forced to move out their way for it. The other thing, of course, is where do you put all these people? And now there's some reports, some fears in some of the papers today talking about ghettos in these places. I will be very interested to see whereabouts these are in the country because, you know, I've seen leaked messages from Tory WhatsApp groups showing people complaining about migrants in their constituency, new places being put in there. So Tory MPs aren't keen to have it in their parts of the country. Everyone wants this issue dealt with, but few people actually want to house the migrants in their part of the UK. So it's one thing where everyone sort of pushes it around. And I suspect before the election, we're not going to see much in the way of progress.